Overdrive this week, we take a look at the Tata Harrier EV's road credentials and take the Tesla Model Y for a spin in our very own bustling Mumbai city. Hello and welcome to Overdrive. I'm Soini Dutt. We've got a power-packed show for you today. Both are EVs and EVs that you're very excited to know about. Now, just a few weeks ago, we drove the Harrier EV and tested its off-road credentials, but we were left wondering what it would feel like to drive on Indian roads. Well, we have the answer now.
By now you already know that the Tata Harrier EV is priced from ₹21.49 lakh. You know all the tech it packs. You also know that it can handle itself decently well off-road. But you don't know what it's actually like to drive or live with in the real world, which is exactly what we're going to tell you in this video.
Out in the open, the Tata Harrier EV doesn't shout its presence like some rivals. Tata Motors has decided to pepper the ICE Harrier styling with its usual EV touches. So you will find a blanked out grille with the rich pattern, blue highlighting and the white Tata logo.
Now you get a frunk with the Harrier EV, even though this isn't what you would traditionally call a skateboard born electric platform, but you do get a frunk. And it's 17 kgs of weight limit and a 35-litre volume. But as you can see, it's quite shallow, so a backpack is a bit difficult to fit, but you will be able to fit the charging cable sort of box.
Now, one of the most striking additions over the standard Harrier are these large 19-inch aero-optimized wheels. They wrap around some chunky EV-specific rubber and give the Harrier EV a smart stance. The rear is similar to the standard Harrier, with the familiar rich pattern for the bumpers being the only change. So the Harrier EV has the presence and sharp styling of a modern SUV.
Now, accessing the boot of the Harrier EV is not as straightforward as I would have liked, to be honest, because to make this rear sort of powered tailgate work, you either have to have the key in your hand or have the car completely turned off, which I think is going to be a bit of a hassle, say if you're driving up to a hotel where your bags need to be checked and so on. But anyway, once you do open it, you will find that there is a bit of a ledge because that's hiding the spare wheel, so I think it's a fair compromise to make. Yes, the lip becomes very high in that regard, and while you do have 504 litres on paper, that's been measured to the roof. So in practicality, you can sort of put, say, 3 bags side by side, reasonably sized trolleys and a couple of maybe backpacks. So I think you will be able to manage a weekend trip.
The big change on the inside is the new 14.5-inch Samsung OLED screen for the touchscreen. It's slim, has sharp touch responses and has great resolution that makes it usable in harsh or low light. The interface is the same as in smaller Tata screens, so it's logical with important functions easy to access. The larger screen size makes this easier still. There's a 10-speaker JBL audio system with Dolby Atmos that's easily one of the nicer ones you'll find anywhere near this price range. The 10.25-inch driver's display is the same as in other Tata vehicles, so while it's logically laid out as well, we still feel the fonts could be larger. The capacitive touch climate panel is still not easy to use on the move. For example, changing the fan speed can get a bit difficult. But thankfully, at least the climate controls have a physical toggle. But the gloss black panels around it are prone to scratching easily. The Harrier EV is more practical inside than other Tata cars. The wireless charger is not easy to access, but it holds the phone in place well. You have 2 Type A and 2 Type C charge ports, one of which is 45 watts. The cup holders may not be the best shape, but you do get quite large door bins. As before, the terrain mode dials and paddles feel great to touch and seem a bit more responsive than in the diesel Harrier.
Now the back seat of the Harrier EV has been given a bit more importance than earlier. You have these side steps now, and with this flat sort of entry and the flat floor, getting in, I must say, is very simple. And yeah, with that new architecture, you have, like I mentioned, a fully flat floor, which makes things easier. And yeah, as you can see, I have space to tuck my feet in under the front seat, and I do sit in a slightly knees up position because the floor has been raised. So even though generally the Harrier had good thigh support, in the EV it's been reduced a little bit. But as you can see, the back seat, the backrest itself is still quite comfortable. And if this kind of space just wasn't enough, then you have this new boss function, which I think, again, like I mentioned, for your city sort of commuting needs will be really quite nice. And as you can see, in its fully forward position, I really can stretch out, and with that theatre sort of seating that the Harrier made popular earlier, I really do have a nice sort of kind of throne kind of view out, which I think a lot of you will like. Now you get those really nice AC vents in the pillars and this big sunroof, even though from my height at least it doesn't eat into head space. You have those sunshades, 265-watt chargers, and yeah, this sort of armrest here.
One of the big talking points with the Harrier EV is its vast list of features. We only really missed a head-up display and a reclining rear seat back, but here's what you get with this electric SUV.
So we've had a little bit of a chance to try out the new low-speed active emergency braking in the Harrier EV. It's sort of a development of what's already available in the regular Harrier, and it lets you sort of use a lot of these ADAS functions at very low speeds. I must say that it's not very intrusive at all. It's quite calm. It won't beep and bong at you constantly. So in that sense, it's good. And it intervenes to the right extent for our conditions. So notice that it will give you a warning when, say, you're not fully paying attention to the car in front of you, and only seems to give you that braking sort of protection or assistance when you're really not paying attention, when you come really close to the car in front of you. So in that sense, I think it's been tuned well for our conditions, but I do feel like there maybe could have been a bit more consistencies.
You have a long list of other ADAS features here, but on the everyday, the parking assistant and summon mode may be some useful tech you could rely on. The Harrier EV has a 5-star B NCAP rating, which should provide some reassurance. The rear view camera is well executed. You don't strain your eyes a lot, although there could have been a choice to adjust its angle like in Range Rovers and not just a zoom function. Combined with the crisp 360-degree cameras and the blind view monitors, which now have a better resolution, placing the Harrier EV in traffic is a bit easier given the large blind spots around the C-pillar.
Well, we're not done with evaluating the Harrier EV on road just yet. Stay with us on Overdrive. More on this after this break. Welcome back. You're watching Overdrive. Now, keeping very integral questions like space, features, performance and range, should the Harrier EV be your next EV or also your very first? Well, it's time to find out.
Now out on the open road, in everyday situations, whether it's traffic or say if you're on an empty road like this, it's quite heartening to see that the Harrier EV is pretty easy to just live with. It's not intimidating. That's 313 combined horsepower and 500 Newton meters of torque. So if you're not used to that kind of performance, that's not really a problem. You sort of learn the ropes with this car. Now I'm driving this in the boost mode and picking up speed. It's not too sharp or jerky or just intimidating in any way.
The Harrier EV makes 158 PS from its front motor and 238 PS from the rear. The power and torque outputs change with the drive modes, but the Harrier EV remains consistent and smooth in all of them. The Eco mode is useful enough for the everyday, but the city mode seems to be a good default choice for most conditions.
Now while the motor itself is quite well calibrated, I would have liked Tata Motors to have worked a bit more on just refining the sort of interactions that you have with the car. By that I mean, say, the throttle response. So while the motor itself is acting very naturally, you do find that sometimes it becomes a bit difficult for you to maintain a steady speed or really see that the car fully sort of reacts quickly enough to your inputs.
As for that claimed 0 to 100 kmph time of 6.3 seconds, we think the Harrier EV will come quite close to it. There's a strong surge of torque as the motor winds up in the boost mode, but again the Harrier EV feels linear and manageable in these straight line runs.
But when you start going quicker, you do realize that all-wheel drive system is giving you a lot of grip. So while we haven't driven this car on, say, a hilly road, even on these highways, those sweeping sort of corners, you do find that there's enough grip holding you in place. That being said, at about 125, 130, you do notice that there's quite some vibrations coming in through the wheel and just from the surface. But that again comes down to that whole refinement aspect. If I'm paying over 30 lakhs for a car, I do expect a certain degree of plushness in the vehicle, which in some respects the Harrier EV is not quite able to give me.
Tata Motors says you should be able to do at least 460 kilometers in the real world in this dual motor version with its 75 kilowatt-hour battery pack. The MIDC range for this variant is 622 kilometers. The Harrier EV can charge it up to 120 kilowatts using a DC fast charger. A good tech intervention here is the DrivePay app that lets you navigate to, charge and pay at charging stations right from your car screen. You won't need to fiddle through a host of apps on your phone.
Now a lot of work has gone into the chassis of the Harrier to turn it into the Harrier EV, and one of the more important of these, or one of the more notable changes, is at the rear suspension, where it's now independent, multi-link and with frequency selective damping. And I must say that you do notice the effects of that immediately. It does feel a more refined, a more modern, a more smoother ride, especially when you're on a smoother, calmer road. And yes, the 19-inch wheels, they do give it a slightly firm edge, which you do notice over broken patches and even say on a slightly abrupt speed breaker. I must say that it's very well sort of muted out, so it won't jar you in the cabin. You will still have a soft edge to it, which makes the whole experience quite comfortable.
The feel that you get from the steering of the Harrier EV is not very precise for what you expect in this segment, which seems to amplify this sense. Yes, the drive modes change heft, but you do feel that a more direct connection is missing. Of course, at lower speeds in traffic, this does come in handy to navigate in tight spaces. That being said, the braking feel is confident. It's not too jerky, and the regen and friction brakes seem to work as one. The regen levels are well defined too. The first level feels the most natural, but again, it's never too abrupt with its deceleration in the higher modes. There is no one-pedal driving, however. Priced at Rs 29 lakh ex-showroom for the empowered quad-wheel drive 75 variant, we wish the Harrier EV felt a bit more refined at this price. Tata Motors does say some of the niggles we faced could be specific to our test vehicles. Either way, the Harrier EV is about as tech-packed as cars get, has a comfortable cabin, is blisteringly quick, and retains that tough, plush ride that makes the Harrier so favorable for our roads.
Well, it's time for you to head into your final commercial break, but don't go anywhere, because on the other side, we drive the Tesla Model Y in Mumbai city.